Welcome to this explainer. If you just glanced at the final box score, you might think the 2026 Hungarian Grand Prix was just another standard race weekend. But what actually unfolded at the Hungaroring was essentially a cinematic battle, one where victory was decided not by raw horsepower, but by an invisible, absolutely ruthless physical phenomenon. Today, we're diving into the hidden story of that weekend. We're looking at the price of clean air and how it literally dictated every single major moment of this race.
So let's just jump right in and meet the absolute villain of our story, dirty air. When a Formula One car is punching a hole through the atmosphere at 200 miles per hour, it doesn't just cut through cleanly. It leaves behind this chaotic, swirling wake. If you're the driver unlucky enough to be stuck following in that wake, your car suddenly loses its aerodynamic grip. It starts sliding around, it chokes up your cooling systems, and worst of all, it absolutely shreds your tires in just a matter of laps.
It really is a life or death scenario for the cars out there. Think of clean air as the holy grail. That's where a driver gets optimal downforce, perfectly preserved tire life, and maximum cooling. Then you have the nightmare of dirty air, with its turbulent wake and extreme tire blistering. Keep in mind, the Hungaroring is often called Monaco without walls because it is so incredibly tight and twisty. Passing is famously rare. So having the pure speed and grip of clean air isn't just a nice-to-have advantage, it's a sheer necessity for survival. Every driver out there is desperately trying to escape that turbulent wake.
Which brings us to the first chapter of our story, qualifying in the furnace.
The desperate scramble for track position and the clean air that comes with it didn't actually start on Sunday. It began on Saturday, defined by one punishing metric, 55 degrees Celsius. That was the track temperature. The Hungaroring was an absolute furnace. When the tarmac is literally that hot, the tires are already on the verge of melting. Throw in the sliding caused by dirty air, and tire degradation becomes a total nightmare. Going into Saturday, everyone knew track position was going to mean absolutely everything.
And in those brutal conditions, Lando Norris proved McLaren had the fastest package, throwing down a stunning 117.207 to grab his first pole position of the season. But behind him, the grid got shaken up dramatically. Mercedes suffered some devastating penalties. Lewis Hamilton impeded Oscar Piastri, and championship leader Kimi Antonelli failed to slow for yellow flags, dropping them both 3 places down the grid. Oh, and a quick shout out to the midfield. Adrian Newey's brilliant new developments finally sparked some real life into Aston Martin, pushing Fernando Alonso into Q2 on pure merit. But at the very front, Lando had secured the best seat in the house for Sunday.
Moving into race day, we hit Section 2, the undercut and the chase. The moment the lights went out, the midfield was instantly choked by dirty air in that intense heat. And when you literally can't pass on track because of the turbulence, you have to turn to strategic warfare in the pit lane. The ultimate weapon here is the undercut. It's a brutal 3-step move. First, you duck into the pits earlier than the car ahead of you to grab fresh rubber. Second, you pump in a blistering outlap, taking full advantage of the grip from your new tires and that beautiful wide-open clean air. Finally, when your rival pits a lap or two later, you've made up so much time that you physically leapfrog them on the track as they exit the pit lane. It's a game changer.
But even the reigning champions couldn't escape this dirty air trap. Just listen to Max Verstappen's radio early in the race. He broadcasted some intense frustration, saying, "The damping failed for sure. Please do something about these shifts." He was battling severe handling issues on his Red Bull. When you're sliding around in dirty air, every single mechanical imperfection feels 10 times worse, and you could hear that absolute exasperation right in his voice.
But, you don't win multiple world championships by just giving up. Max channeled that frustration into a relentless drive. Instead of just following the standard undercut strategy like everyone else, he bypassed the turbulence altogether by extending his stints. He ran incredibly long on the hard tires, eventually switching to a soft tire for a late race charge. This brilliant offset strategy let him hunt down his old rival Lewis Hamilton, culminating in a phenomenal, aggressive late-braking overtake into Turn 1 to steal second place.
Meanwhile, behind all that action, the midfield was pure chaos. George Russell suffered a disastrous start when his anti-stall kicked in, dropping him to dead last. But he utilized clean air strategy perfectly to mount a relentless recovery drive from P21 all the way up to 7th. On the flip side, Lewis Hamilton, who had been fighting tooth and nail for a podium, got hit with a crushing 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane, which ultimately dropped him behind Ferrari's Charles Leclerc. And quietly navigating all this chaos was Red Bull's Ishaq Hadjar, who brilliantly brought home some very solid points in P6.
Now for the emotional core of our story. Section 3, Heartbreak at the Front. While the midfield brawled, a classic tale of two teammates was unfolding at the very front. Remember how Lando started on pole? Well, his teammate Oscar Piastri executed a flawless start, got the jump off the line, and stole the lead right out of turn 1. And by stealing the lead, Piastri stole the most valuable commodity in Hungary, the clean air. Norris was suddenly trapped, suffocating in his teammate's turbulent wake.
Now, for the first half of the race, Piastri controlled the pace beautifully. But as the afternoon wore on, the punishing heat and tactical pit sequences really started to shuffle the deck. Piastri's grip on the race began to slip. It culminated in this harrowing radio message to his team when they asked him to push. "I don't really have any pace."
Right behind him, the dynamic was the exact opposite. Trapped in the dirty air of his struggling teammate Lando was growing incredibly desperate. You can practically feel the urgency in his radio transmission. "I'm miles faster." Norris knew for a fact he had the quickest car on the track, but as long as he was stuck in Piastri's wake, he was powerless to use it. He desperately needed to be unleashed.
And this all bubbles over on lap 56. Just after McLaren's final pit stop set up what looked to be a grandstand finish between the two teammates, absolute disaster struck. It was a heartbreaking collapse for Piastri, as his gearbox completely failed. He had to pull over, his race was instantly over. In this incredibly dramatic twist of fate, Piastri's retirement literally handed the clean air and ultimately an emotional first win of the 2026 season right back to Lando Norris.
All right, as the dust settles and Formula One heads into the summer break, let's look at Section 4. The championship picture. Looking at the driver standings, it's impossible to ignore what's happening over at Mercedes. Their rookie sensation Kimi Antonelli has completely capitalized on the chaos. Despite that grid penalty we mentioned, he drove a mature, calculated race to finish third. With that podium, he's extended a massive championship lead over his vastly more experienced teammate Lewis Hamilton, 219 points to 169. Lando Norris's victory brings him up to fifth with 128 points, but he definitely has a mountain to climb in the second half of the year.
Over in the constructors' battle, Mercedes remains firmly dominant at the top with 379 points, a very healthy 72-point margin over Ferrari. However, McLaren's breakthrough win, pushing them to 220 points, signals that they have unlocked some serious pace in that car. It promises a fierce battle ahead for the rest of 2026, especially as Red Bull, sitting in fourth with 177 points, continues to search for their missing consistency.
Ultimately, this leaves us pondering a pretty thrilling question for the remainder of the season. The Hungarian Grand Prix proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that mastering aerodynamics, finding and utilizing clean air while surviving the dirty air is the true key to Formula One glory. It's not just about the engine in the back anymore, it's about the air flowing over the wings. So as we look to the rest of the calendar, how will these teams adapt? Who is going to conquer these invisible currents to claim the 2026 World Championship? I honestly can't wait to find out. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and we'll see you next time.